It is 8 p.m. and here are our top stories in 90 seconds.
We have an obligation to do this work.
Denver Mayor Michael Hancock and Denver Police Chief Paul Pazin lay out plans to rethink policing.
So it is building upon the foundation, the evidence-based approaches to hotspot policing.
But a task force whose job it was to do just that says the city's plan could continue old habits.
I was concerned about some of the buzzwords that we use, such as hotspots.
Tonight, we have in-depth coverage taking you inside one of those neighborhoods dubbed a hotspot.
The community can make the difference in what we need. If the community can step up and say, hey, we're going to make sure that this program or these programs or this center that's been put up, it survives.
This conversation in Denver is happening as our nation has the same conversation approaching 1 year since George Floyd's death.
We have 18,000 police departments and no national standards.
We gotta look at past practices, what's not working anymore.
Plus, a military plane crashes in a neighborhood near Las Vegas, leaving neighbors scrambling.
I heard a plane that sounded like it was a prop plane.
And a Denver7 investigation helps pass new legislation in Colorado to protect children like Ty Tesserero.
Jing Tesserero lost her son. Nothing can be harder than losing a child, but she was able to find some meaning and drive to make improvements.
Good Monday evening, and thank you for watching Denver7 News on Local 3. I'm Jacqueline Allen. Tonight, we are digging deeper on the City of Denver's plan to improve public safety, address a rise in crime citywide, and look into some of the recommendations handed out by a task force. First, a timeline on the policing task force put into place in the wake of the George Floyd protests last year. The task force was formed to reimagine policing and public safety. They received feedback from everyone, including police. But back in January, law enforcement exited that task force, and city leaders pulled $50,000 in funding as well. The task force continued to do its work separately from law enforcement and gave 112 recommendations on public safety to the city of Denver. Some are just no-brainers, some may never happen, and a lot are complicated. Today, Mayor Michael Hancock says his team is still looking into those recommendations.
We have an obligation to do this work. Now, 1 year after the murder of George Floyd sparked a long overdue reckoning on race and the systemic issues in our criminal justice system, it is excruciatingly obvious that police cannot just be about reacting to incidents.
But despite this, the mayor's office, public safety, and police department spoke more broadly about those recommendations and did not go in depth about how they will implement the recommendations. Instead, Mayor Hancock and Denver Police Chief Paul Pazin laid out a plan to address a rise in crime in Denver. The city intends to focus its attention on South Federal and West Alameda, Colfax and Broadway, East Colfax and Yosemite, East 47th and North Peoria, and MLK and North Holly. All areas they say have a high rate of crime. Today, we visited the so-called hotspot near Federal and Alameda. Neighbors there say crime has gone up and the pandemic is to blame. With kids at home, parents at work, and schools closed, teens aren't getting much supervision. But some say a bigger police presence is only putting a Band-Aid on the issue, not solving it.
I don't think policing in neighborhoods that are underserved ever helps and ever really acknowledges or addresses the root causes of any of these actual problems.
Denver Police Chief Paul Pazin says increasing patrols and working directly with neighbors has been proven to reduce crime. That area near 47th and Peoria is in Denver's Montbello neighborhood. Community leaders there want to make sure there is enough funding for grassroots efforts. Denver7 CB Cotton visited the Montbello neighborhood to hear their reaction to the city's crime plan.
He just graduated, earning his master's degree.
These are more than just photos.
Wesley Osbury has his master's degree from Harvard University.
For Narcy Jackson, they're the purpose behind his life's work.
We really push, don't be just a student athlete, be a scholar athlete.
Jackson has been mentoring to Denver youth through the nonprofit he co-founded, Athletics and Beyond, since 2005.
PJ Gallegos is in the Navy.
The nonprofit is known for its work in historically under-resourced areas, such as the Montbello neighborhood, a neighborhood that's home to a street address with increased crime over the past year. That's according to Denver leaders.
Together, as the mayor indicated, we can address these.
So on Monday, Mayor Michael Hancock, alongside Police Chief Paul Pazin, announced the formation of the Transformation and Policy Division, a strategy to address violent crime and police reform.
It is critical that we point out that these are proven strategies to focus on crime while fully developing the support of our residents in order to have residents and business owners take a more collaborative approach, a more supportive approach to their own safety.
Some details of what the new division will do, vague. Others, more concrete.
Denver police say one of the solutions could look like more patrols in areas like this one, 47th and Peoria, identified as one of the hot spots for violence. But community organizers say they're already doing the work. They just need more support.
The community can make the difference in what we need. If the community can step up and say, hey, we're going to make sure that this program or these programs or this center that's been put up, it survives.
Jackson says he and other nonprofits have struggled with funding for years. It's why it took over a decade to make their new facility a reality.
That's going to be wrestling mat.
Something that graduates of the nonprofit saw firsthand.
If we could be able to fund more nonprofit organizations and resources, for example, Narcy's organization and many others, we will be able to put ourselves in a better position to see less crime, less acts of violence, and more self-love in our communities.
The loopholes and the disqualifications that exist, it really discourages grassroots organizations from applying in the first place.
In a series of emails, the mayor's office told Denver7 that funding decisions for the new police division haven't yet been made, but called community support foundational for improvements. Support that some say is long overdue.
Empower us to do the work that you say you want done to minimize and reduce violence or prevent violence from happening in the first place.
In Montbello, I'm CB Cotton, Denver7.
So why all of this discussion on police in Colorado and America now? Well, tomorrow marks 1 year since the death of George Floyd at the hands of Minneapolis police. But as Washington continues to negotiate police reform, what impact is all of this change having on police officers? Denver7 political reporter Joe St. George has a closer look.
The murder of George Floyd 1 year ago has changed a lot in this country. Murals have gone up, police reform enacted, and while Congress hasn't passed anything yet, at least 140 state laws have changed since George Floyd's murder, according to the National Conference of State Legislatures.
I think across the country that we're seeing nationally a decline in those applying.
Colonel Patrick Callahan leads the New Jersey State Police, one of the largest departments on the East Coast, and says while the protests have resulted in some common sense reforms like making sure bad cops don't get jobs elsewhere,
I don't think I could stand here and say that no reform is needed.
It's also resulted in a decline of men and women wanting to be police officers.
This is a historically low application process for us.
In a typical year in New Jersey, there are anywhere between 10 to 15,000 applications to join the state police. This past year, just 3,600. The colonel doesn't blame the drop entirely on all of this police reform talk, but it's part of it.
People say it to me all the time, oh, you couldn't pay me enough to do that job.
What's happening in New Jersey is happening across the country. According to the Police Executive Research Forum, there is a 63% decrease nationwide in applying to become a police officer. More early retirements are being reported too. All of this on the minds of lawmakers on Capitol Hill as they try to negotiate police reform. President Biden wanted it done by the anniversary of George Floyd's death. That won't be happening.
But while a decline in being a police officer is being felt in many police departments and by many police unions, it's not being felt everywhere.
This is Barnegat, New Jersey.
We're at the Jersey Shore.
Chief Keith Germain says while other police chiefs are struggling to find officers, he's not.
We're an anomaly there.
He recently had 4 openings and received 400 applicants. A big reason the seaside town pays patrolmen around $130,000 a year. The high pay giving him flexibility to hire only the best and brightest. And he's seeing more city officers interested in the suburban life.
Many of those applicants were NYPD, New York City Police Department, Philly PD. You have to pay them well to get them in the door.
Still, though, Chief Germain is keeping an eye on Washington. While he isn't having problems recruiting officers now, he says if some police reforms are too drastic, he will.
You are simply creating an environment where police officers are going to be very hesitant to take action.
Still, though, whatever Congress or state governments decide to enact, both of these officers say their departments will be there.
People are still going to call 911.
In fact, Colonel Callahan believes this period of uncertainty may just result in the best police force this country's ever had.
I think back to the greatest generation and when they came back from World War II and dug their heels in and built up America after World War II. I think right now is that opportunity too.
In Trenton, New Jersey, I'm Joe St. George.
And among the recommendations given to the city of Denver by the policing task force is changing response to peaceful protests. Coming up at 8:30, we look at the changes being recommended for Denver police on how they respond to protests in the future. Right now on thedenverchannel.com, we also have all of our in-depth coverage of the task force recommendations and the mayor's announcement. There you will find every one of the 112 recommendations, as well as community reaction to the mayor's crime announcement and the new division created to address violent crime.
I'm just feeling that finally we're accomplished something.
A grieving mother finds purpose a year and a half after her son was killed at the hands of his father.
I need to know that what happened to Ty, it meant something. It's not just a death of a child.
Now, a newly signed law in Ty's honor will help make sure no child has the same fate.
A quiet night across Colorado, and it looks like a good-looking Tuesday. I'll let you know when thunderstorms might return.
And coming up later, where is your personal data winding up?
The end goal, realistically, for a lot of these companies is to build the most clear picture of their individual customer.
We look at the top company giving away your information.